TED Talks. Really? Are they good anymore? Were they ever really that good? I mean, they seem kind of like a vanity project for a lot of the people. But today, we're going to take on TED Talks. Two of the biggest and best of all time, Brené Brown and Simon Sinek. Oh, you know, my name is Simon. On this episode of Work Trauma, How Corporations Really Work, TED Talk Takedown. Takedown. Hello, I'm Michael Denisoff, CEO and Principal Director of Denisoff Consulting Group, an international consulting firm dedicated to innovating organizations and how they can perform better, be more successful, and grow strong and robust cultures. And welcome to the Work Trauma, How Corporations Really Work podcast, a podcast dedicated to pulling back the curtain to explain how large corporations work so you can make better decisions about who you work for, how you navigate your career, and if you're a leader, how to be a better leader and make organizations better for all people. All right, today's program, like I said, it's TED Talk Takedown. And TED Talk Takedown is really good because we get to look at these things called TED Talks. And TED Talks are kind of interesting to me because we all loved them, especially when they came out in the 2000 nuts, right? They were good, they were inspiring, but were they really good? So today I take on two of the biggest ones ever with over 66 million views for each of them and with people that you know. So I don't want to get hate letters because this one person I'm not that crazy about. One person I kind of liked, but I think has jumped the shark a little bit himself. And if you're lucky, I do a bonus one because I like to make fun of marketing people because they're just such marketing people. Hopefully we'll have time to do a really short commercial that I keep on hearing that's killing me. So let's talk about how we're going to do this then. Remember, some TED Talks are good, so I don't want to ban on all of them. I'm not here to bag on anything either. You could bag on any of my videos, I'm sure. But these are held with such high esteem that they really deserve some critical looking after, if you will. So let me just kind of be clear on this. Listen, some TED Talks are really good, but man, a lot of them, especially now today, they're really bad. And that's mostly because it's pay for play, because you pay to get into a TED Talk. So you don't even have to be good. You just have to have some money to get a TED Talk. So that's one issue. The TED Talks also jumped the shark when everybody wanted to have a TED Talk, because that was the thing to do. It's like when everybody wanted to be a speaker. Now everybody wants to be a TED Talker. I did a TED Talk. Look at me. I did a TED Talk. I did a TED Talk I paid for, and I put it on my LinkedIn profile. So, it became like what people do now when they climb Everest. They'll have one person and they'll hire 6 Sherpas, and they'll say they climbed Everest when really the 6 Sherpas carried them up there for sure. Also, there's this phenomenon I hate where every TED Talker thinks they're Steve Jobs. So they walk around, they pace, and they try to emulate him, which I get it. Steve Jobs was brilliant on the stage. He was a brilliant man in a lot of ways. But emulating him and the pacing is just so terribly unoriginal for sure. And particularly these days, which really drives me nuts about TED Talks. And maybe it's not just today. Maybe if we look back, it's still the same. So many of the people who give TED Talks seem to tell the people what they want to hear, right? And part of what we do on the Work Trauma podcast is we try to tell how leadership really works and how corporations really work, as opposed to this pablum or these platitudes that we're giving so much that really doesn't help us out. All right, I think that does that. Oh yeah, a couple other things that I hate about them too. What is, some of these presenters present their topic like they're the only ones who presented it. I have a feeling that's what it's going to be like for Brené Brown today, because I've talked to some of her people, and she invented and created this stuff that has been around for a long, long time, for sure. So that bothers me. Now, you can argue, well, there's no original thoughts. We kind of take everybody's thoughts and we integrate them and we build upon them. I'll buy that. But some of the attitude is, I'm the first one to do this, isn't all that great. Secondarily, too, a lot of these presenters, they tell these stories, and the stories are clearly embellished, right? And how do I know that? Because I've been doing this for so long. You kind of can see through people when they tell a story, and they make it a little bit bigger and better than it really was, which is a shame because the story itself tells the story. It's good. You don't have to embellish it, but a lot of them want to go for that, hey, amazing shot, so they can get more clicks or get more likes. So just be aware of that. So if I see stories that are being clicked out, and I think the last thing that really bothers me is about the TED Talks is I'm not sure they're there to help you improve your life. They're there to kind of enjoy and bask in the fame of giving a TED Talk. They're kind of like, look at me, I'm giving a TED Talk. I am bringing my wisdom to the world. All right, that's what drives me nuts about these TED Talks. I think that's it. No, there's one more thing. The other big problem with the TED Talk is so what? So you watch a TED Talk, so what? Did you change? Did it change your behavior? Did you do anything with it? Are you better because of it? Or did it feel like infotainment? It's good. It was like watching the Rocky IV training montage scene. Unless you go out and start running the next day and working out and change your diet, that montage scene is just a nice inspirational scene. And a lot of these TED Talks, I feel, kind of go that way. All right. So I will do my best to be honestly critique the content. I will not be mean just for the sake of being mean. But if something's kind of wonky, I'll point it out. Something's good, I will point it out as well. Remember, this will be the first time I'll be watching these. Now, the Simon Sinek one, I remember seeing when it first came out 15 years ago, so I don't really remember it. So it'll be the second time I've seen it, but I don't remember it. So it'll be like the first time I've seen it. Like I said, I'll give you my best thinking on that, and you could critique too. Have any comments or any suggestions? Let me know in the comments. So let's go ahead. Let's move to our first talk. I think I'm going to start with Brené Brown. So hold on a second. Let's get started. All right, here we go with Brené Brown. Oh yeah. Okay. Full disclosure. I've met some of Brené Brown's disciples and coaches years ago, and they were very irksome, if you want it. They were a bit cult-like, and they thought that Brené was the greatest thing. And she was everywhere for a while. I mean, everywhere. I haven't heard too much for her. I know she had a Spotify deal that wasn't going very well, and then she made it about Joe Rogan or something. I don't really know, but I haven't heard anything from her. I know she was faculty, I think it was at University of Houston. And but she came on the scene and it was huge. It was just everywhere. But the two of the folks that I talked to from her organization or who were connected to her were like, I would always say things like, well, some of this stuff has kind of been around for a while. No, it's not. This is absolutely new research and new ideas. Really talking about shame and things like that, or authenticity, that's a new idea in the world of leadership and business and people development. I don't think so. Oh, yes, it is. So so full disclosure, I have a chip on my shoulder about her already. But let's go ahead. Let's get started.
So I'll start with this. A couple of years ago, an event planner called me because I was going to do a speaking event. And she called and she said, I'm really struggling with how to write about you on the little flyer. And I thought, well, what's the struggle? And she said, well, I saw you speak, and I'm going to call you a researcher, I think, but I'm afraid if I call you a researcher, no one will come because they'll think you're boring and irrelevant.
All right, typical joke.
Okay, and she said, but the thing I liked about your talk is, you're a storyteller. So I think what I'll do is just call you a storyteller. And of course, the academic insecure part of me was like,
I didn't know there was academic insecure parts of people. I didn't know the academics were that insecure. Maybe it's your insecurity, Brené. Hi, I'm Michael, but Brené.
You're going to call me a what? And she said, I'm going to call you a storyteller. And I was like, oh, why not Magic Pixie? I was like, let me think about this for a second.
Yes, because because academic people are so much smarter than everybody else. But go ahead, please. I digress.
So I tried to call deep on my courage, and I thought...
She had to call deep on her courage. She didn't like what this woman was calling her, giving her title. So she had to call deep on her courage. She's so courageous. I thought the people on the battlefield of war and in Afghanistan, they were courageous, but she called on her courage. I'm being mean on this one. I'm sorry.
I am a storyteller. I'm a qualitative researcher. I collect stories. That's what I do. And maybe stories are just data with a soul, and maybe I'm just a storyteller. So I said, you know what?
Maybe data is this maybe stories are just data with a soul. I think we could all learn from that.
Why don't you just say I'm a researcher storyteller? And she went, there's no such thing. So I'm a researcher storyteller. And I'm going to talk to you today. We're talking about expanding perception. And so I want to talk to you and tell some stories about a piece of my research that fundamentally expanded my perception and really actually changed the way that I live and love and work and parent. And this is where my story starts. Wow. When I was a young researcher, doctoral student, my first year, I had a research professor who said to us, here's the thing. If you cannot measure it, it does not exist. And I thought he was just sweet talking me. I was like, really? And he's like, absolutely. So you have to understand that I have a bachelor's in social work, a master's in social work, and I was getting my PhD in social work. So my entire academic career was surrounded by people who...
Which definitely gives you the right to tell how businesses should be run. But go ahead. And by the way, if you can't measure it, it doesn't exist. That's an interesting way to look at it. I don't think I think if anything can be measured, or most anything can be measured. Can the supernatural be measured? I don't know. Some of those ghost shows think so. Anyway, but let's continue, shall we?
I believed in the life's messy, love it, and I'm more the life's messy, clean it up, organize it, and put it into a bento box. And so to think that I had found my way, to found a career that takes me, really one of the big sayings in social work is lean into the discomfort of the work. And I'm like,
yes,
knock discomfort upside the head and move it over and get all A's. That was my mantra.
She's so brave
I was very
and strong.
excited about this. And so I thought,
lean into
what?
it. That was a big phrase for a while.
Because I am interested in some messy topics, but I want to be able to make them not messy. I want to understand them. I want to hack into these things that I know are important and lay the code out for everyone to see. So where I started was with connection, because by the time you're a social worker for 10 years, what you realize is that connection is why we're here. It's what gives purpose and meaning to our lives. This is what it's all about. It doesn't matter whether you talk to people who work in social justice and mental health and abuse and neglect. What we know is that connection, the ability to feel connected, is neurobiologically, that's how we're wired. It's why we're here. So I thought, I'm going to...
Okay, she keeps on saying, it's why we're here, like here in the studio. I think she means, in the eschatological way, meaning in the big way, why we exist. We exist to be connected. Interesting comment. Also, I get it. Connection is what makes us human. We desire to connect with people. So again, I can't dismiss that, but I'm not sure if that's a new thing Brené is bringing to us, but let's find out.
Connection. Well, that situation where you get an evaluation from your boss and she tells you 37 things that you do really awesome and one thing that you can't, an opportunity for growth. And all you can think about is that opportunity for growth, right? Well, apparently this is the way my work went as well, because when you ask people about love, they tell you about heartbreak. When you ask people about belonging, they'll tell you their most excruciating experiences of being excluded.
Okay.
And when you ask people about connection, the stories they told me were about disconnection. So very quickly, really about 6 weeks into this research, I ran into this unnamed thing that absolutely unraveled connection in a way that I didn't understand or had never seen. And so I pulled back out of the research and thought, I need to figure out what this is. And it turned out to be
picture of two
shame.
hands. Oh,
and shame is really easily understood as the fear of disconnection. Is there something about me that if other people know it or see it, that I won't be worthy of connection? The things I can tell you about it, it's universal. We all have it. The only people who don't experience shame have no capacity for human empathy or connection. No one wants to talk about it, and the less you talk about it, the more you have it.
I don't know if that's true.
What underpinned this shame, this I'm not good enough, which we all know that feeling. I'm not blank enough. I'm not thin enough, rich enough, beautiful enough, smart enough.
Again, I feel like I'm on the Oprah show right now, right? It's those cliche things. Yes, we all feel this way. We all have the imposter syndrome, right? We all have moments of that for sure. But as you grow and evolve, you grow through that. And just as an aside, too, things like shame and fear have been written about through the ages. There's a lot in Christendom about fear and shame and overcoming it and working through it. And it's part of our humanity. But yeah, this is interesting. Not necessarily in a good way, but okay, here we go.
Promoted enough. The thing that underpinned this was excruciating vulnerability.
Not just vulnerability, excruciating vulnerability. All right. Excruciating vulnerability.
Idea of, in order for connection to happen, we have to allow ourselves to be seen.
To be seen.
And you know how I feel about vulnerability. I hate vulnerability. And so I thought, this is my chance to beat it back with my measuring stick. I'm going in. I'm going to figure this stuff out. I'm going to spend a year. I'm going to totally deconstruct shame. I'm going to understand how vulnerability works, and I'm going to outsmart it. So I was ready, and I was really excited.
Look at you. Look at you. She was really excited. Just too, I think Brené background, she comes from a pretty privileged and wealthy background, I believe. So I'm glad she's exploring these things and sharing them with the peasants. Here we go.
As you know, it's not going to turn out well. You know this. So I could tell you a lot about shame, but I'd have to borrow everyone else's time. But here's what I can tell you that it boils down to. And this may be one of the most important things that I've ever learned in the decade of doing this research. My 1 year has turned into 6 years, thousands of stories, hundreds of long interviews, focus groups. At one point, people were sending me journal pages and sending me their stories, thousands of pieces of data in 6 years. And I kind of got a handle on it. I kind of understood this is what shame is, this is how it works. I wrote a book, I published a theory, but something was not okay. And what it was is that if I roughly took the people I interviewed and divided them into people who really have a sense of worthiness. That's what this comes down to, a sense of worthiness.
No, worthy.
They have a strong sense of love and belonging, and folks who struggle for it, and folks who are always wondering if they're good enough. There was only one variable that separated the people who have a strong sense of love and belonging and the people who really struggle for it, and that was the people who have a strong sense of love and belonging believe they're worthy of love and belonging.
Again, I don't know where she's been for the last few thousand years. We kind of know this. Again, I'm not demeaning it. It's a good point, right? Children who grow up that are loved and feel whole and safe, they do really well in life. Those who don't feel safe, their parents don't love them like they should, they're going to struggle their whole life with a lot of this stuff, for sure. Okay. But again, I'm not sure it's anything new. My worry is that stuff like this turns from being, you're all worthy, which we all are, right? We're all God's children. So we're all worthy, but that turns from we're all worthy, but I still need to work on myself. I still need to do things better. And it turns into this, I am worthy. And it turns into a narcissism, by the way, which we see a lot in the world today, right? You go queen, right? Who calls himself a queen, or king for that matter, to be universal with both genders. It's kind of a weird thing. So I'm worried she's going to turn this into, one, something new, which it's not. And two, what does it mean to be worthy? And where do you get your worthiness? From the external world? There's probably something to be said about being worthy on the inside. But anyway, but let's see. I'm worried some of this stuff has infected our society today. But let's see. We'll do a few more minutes and we'll move on.
They believe they're worthy. And to me, the hard part of the one thing that keeps us out of connection is our fear that we're not worthy of connection, was something that personally and professionally I felt like I needed to understand better. So what I did is I took all of the interviews where I saw worthiness, where I saw...
So self-referential. What I did this, and I did this, and I looked over this. Which I understand it's part of her study, so maybe I'm just being too harsh on her.
People living that way, and just looked at those. What do these people have in common? And I have a slight office supply addiction, but it's another talk. So I had a manila notebook, a manila folder, and I had a Sharpie. And I was like, what am I going to call this research? And the first words that came to my mind were wholehearted. These are kind of wholehearted people living from this deep sense of worthiness. So I wrote at the top of the manila folder and I started looking at the data. In fact, I did it first in this in a 4-day, very intensive data analysis where I went back, pulled these interviews, pulled the stories, pulled the incidents. What's the theme? What's the pattern?
She's so brave and courageous.
My husband left town with the kids. Because I always go into this kind of Jackson Pollock crazy thing where I'm just like writing and going and kind of just in my researcher mode.
Because I'm as cool as Jackson Pollock. Because I'm just cool. I do things you mere mortals could not.
And so here's what I found. What they had in common was a sense of courage. And I want to separate courage and bravery for you for a minute. Courage, the original definition of courage, when it first came into the English language, it's from the Latin word cur, meaning heart. And the original definition was to tell the story of who you are with your whole heart.
Yeah, I'm not sure that's
and
right.
So these folks
I think that's been
very
challenged. I
simply
remember
the
years ago that was
courage to
challenged.
be imperfect.
I don't know. I can't verify nor deny that.
They had the compassion to be kind to themselves first and then to others, because as it turns out, we can't practice compassion with other people if we can't treat ourselves kindly. And the last was that...
Again, to love other people, you have to love yourself, a concept that has been around for a while. But courage, compassion,
and this was the hard part, as a result of authenticity. They were willing to let go.
You have to bring authenticity in there because that's a big buzzword.
In order to be who they were.
It's a good word. I'm not picking on the word. It's a good word. People should be authentic.
Absolutely do that for connection.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm just gonna jump ahead and we'll maybe do another minute.
So she goes like this.
The middle of the story. Maybe I'll go somewhere else.
I don't want to feel these. And I know that's knowing laughter. I hack into your lives for a living. I know that's, God.
All right, she just said it. I hack into your lives for religion. I'm like on a God. Wow, that's wild. So, all right, I can't do this anymore. I can't. All right, I'm sure she's a nice person. I'm sure she means well. And again, I can't refute some of the things or much of the things she says, but the context I can. So I think she goes on this whole thing about shame, and vulnerability is a big thing for Brené Brown. And it's good to be vulnerable at times. And there's times not to be vulnerable. Like if somebody's breaking into your house and you need to protect your family, time to be vulnerable, right? If you're a leader, there's times you should be vulnerable and open up. And there's some times you should be firm and strong. So there should be balance in our lives. Again, I didn't watch the rest of the video. I may or may not when this is over, but you can kind of see where it's going. You can kind of see like, oh, you got to be authentic, you got to be compassionate, you got to love yourself. But this constant focus on self doesn't really build connection, right? What builds connection is actually reaching out, taking care of other people. Stephen Covey used to say, if you want good friends, be a good friend. So this seems like the inverse to me, but perhaps I judge her too harsh. So that's Brené Brown. You should watch it. Maybe I'm missing out on her. Maybe she's amazing. Again, oh, by the way, that has 67 million views. So she's doing something right, I guess, maybe, or she's talking to things people want to hear to excuse some of their shortcomings in life. I don't know. And by the way, shame isn't a bad thing. A lot of shame is a bad thing. Feeling shameful about yourself constantly is a bad thing. But shame to me, and good shame, right? My mom would always say, save people's shame. Like, don't embarrass people in public, right? But you should still talk to them in private, right? It's like a manager giving feedback to somebody. You shouldn't tell everybody, yell at your direct report or give that negative feedback in public because they just get embarrassed. They feel shamed. And one, they're not listening to you at that point because they're feeling so much shame. But you still got to give them that feedback. Same thing with guilt. I think guilt has a bad thing. Like, oh, all that guilt, all that bad guilt. If you do something wrong and you feel guilty, a little guilty, I think that's good. If your life is driven only by guilt, of course that's bad, right? If that's your only emotion you have is guilt, that's bad. But if you feel guilty for doing something wrong, I think that's good. If you feel shameful for doing something that was beneath you and beneath the higher pull, the higher laws, little shame, maybe not a bad thing. All right, let's move on. All right, let's go now to Simon Sinek. Simon Sinek is such an interesting cat. And by the way, that Brené Brown was from, I think, 2010. This one we're going to look at from Simon is from 2009. Or I could have got the dates mixed up. And Simon's an interesting guy. It's a British accent. How can you not love it? Because when British people say things, it makes a lot more sense than anybody else. It just sounds good. It has credibility to it, even though it's not true. It just sounds like it does. Early on, I got Simon's book somewhere back there, Begin with the Why, right? But again, I read the book. It was good. It's everything a lot of things, all of it, I probably believed in. So it was great. But Begin with the Why has been around for a long time, right? It's easy to say no when there's a deeper yes burning within. You have to know why you're doing it before what you're doing it. Again, this has been around from, my early days with Stephen Covey in the early 90s. You read, the great Stoics, you'll talk about the why again. So is it new and original? Maybe the way he presents it was, but anyway, I don't even know what the name of this one is. Let me see. So let me share this one with y'all. Simon's an interesting guy. I think he was an ad executive for a while, and he started going out talking to businesses. I'm not sure he's run anything, run a business, but he's smooth and he's cool. So I'm sure he was great at presentations as an ad executive guy. And we'll talk about Simon Sinek.
How do you explain when others are able to achieve things that seem to defy all of the assumptions? For example, why is Apple so innovative? Year after year after year after year,
Apple.
They're more innovative than all their competition.
Used by every speaker.
And yet they're just a computer company. They're just like everyone else. They have the same access to the same talent, the same agencies, the same consultants.
Let me go back. I like Simon. I ain't going to lie to you. I like Simon. I liked him in the beginning. My favorite thing Simon does, he talks about the alpha dog and why the alpha dog eats first. And the alpha dog eats first because because he's going to protect the tribe, the group, the herd, and will be the first one to die for it. And he made that distinction between the alpha dogs, i.e. the CEOs of today, where they get the best food, they get the best pick of the litter, except they are the last ones to die. They sacrifice everybody else before they sacrifice themselves. I thought that was one of the most powerful things I saw regarding CEO leadership ever. I loved it, and again, I like him. But I think as of lately, some of the stuff I've been seeing by him, it's kind of like the Brené thing. You get to this reductionism, and then things start to break apart. And then you feel like you have to outdo yourself. So lately, I think Simon's been on this kick about, tap into everybody's heart and soul. I'm like, no, that's not good. The company already has a pound of your flesh, okay? They just need to pay you well, treat you fairly, treat you like a good human, do some things that are inspiring. But to tap into people's heart and soul, my heart and soul is from my God and my family. So I don't know what he's saying nowadays. But I think what happens is you always have to outdo yourself. And then the other gurus try to outdo you. And then all of a sudden, before you know it, you're going down these crazy paths that, again, on the surface sounds great. Yeah, it'd be great if my company really inspired my heart and soul. No, they want your heart and soul. Very dangerous. All right, that's my diatribe on Simon. Let's keep going on this. I'm sure it's good. I think this is early Simon, so I'm sure it's good.
The same media, then why is it that they seem to have something different? Why is it that Martin Luther King led the civil rights movement? He wasn't the only man who suffered in a pre-civil rights America, and he certainly wasn't the only great orator of the day. Why him? And why is it that the Wright brothers were able to figure out controlled powered manned flight when there were certainly other teams who were better qualified, better funded, and they didn't achieve powered manned flight, and the Wright brothers beat them to it? There's something else at play
heard
here.
These stories before, but good. I'd be
About
curious where you're going with this.
3.5 years ago, I made a discovery. And this discovery profoundly changed my view on how I thought the world worked, and it even profoundly changed the way in which I operate in it. As it turns out, there's a pattern. As it turns out, all the great and inspiring leaders and organizations in the world, whether it's Apple or Martin Luther King or the Wright brothers, they all think, act, and communicate the exact same way. And it's the complete opposite to everyone else. All I did was codify it. And it's probably the world's simplest idea. I call it the golden circle.
Okay, sorry. 3 concentric circles, a standard for all presenters. The why, the how, and the what.
How, what. This little idea explains why some organizations and some leaders are able to inspire where others aren't. Let me define the terms really quickly. Every single person, every single organization on the planet knows what they do 100%. Some know how they do it.
Even that I would question. Some organizations don't know really what they do. They suffer identity crisis for sure. But in general, they know what they do. They know what kind of company they are, at least. Okay, fair enough. I'm just being petty.
Whether you call it your differentiating value proposition or your proprietary process or your USP, but very few people or organizations.
USP, value proposition, written by the marketing people, not necessarily the actual product of the company, but written to sound great by the marketing people. But go ahead.
Know why they do what they do. And by why, I don't mean to make a profit. That's a result. It's always a result. By why, I mean, what's your purpose? What's your cause? What's your belief? Why does your organization exist? Why do you get out of bed in the morning?
Again, this sounds so good, but I'm not sure of it. I used to buy into it more. Why does your organization exist? It's really to fulfill a need for the market and to make a profit and make money for the shareholders and the people that work there. And nobody likes talking about it like that. Yes, should it have a deeper purpose? Yes, right? Can it also have a purpose? Of course, right? And a lot of times those purposes are spun. Mostly it's really to meet a market need because a company doesn't have an intrinsic right to exist. And the why you get out of bed, man, that's a stretch for me again. Why the company exists and why I get out of bed, 2 very different things. right? Now, do I want my why to be congruent with the company? Of course, right? And most people do, right? Especially the young generation. I love them, right? They want their why, their value systems to be aligned with the company. They're not going to work for a company they don't believe in. They want to be a company that adds good to the world. So that's a good thing. So is that why important? Yes, but the why of the profitability and the why of making market need, it is the biggest part of it for a company. For a person, it's different. Now, you might be a really purpose-driven company, right? Which is good, or a nonprofit, which would be even better, would be closer to that for sure. But I worked at a $3 billion nonprofit, and let me tell you, yes. Was it important because it was helping kids and carrying these things? Yes. Was there most people who worked there because they felt purpose and they felt like they were giving. But I would tell you, when I would sit in the room with the top 150 leaders, their why was about how much they were getting paid and how much esteem they wanted in the globe. Did they still want to help the kids? Of course they did. But did they have a strong drive that they want to get paid a lot and be recognized as one of the top 2 or 3 people in the world? You betcha. So again, I think this oversimplification is not real. It's not true. It sounds good, right? And a good company will have a big purpose and will tap into people's otherwise, or at least be congruent with them, right? But for this to be the only thing, I don't know. Maybe I judged too soon. Here we go. Back to Simon.
Why should anyone care? Well, as a result, the way we think, the way we act, the way we communicate is from the out.
Well, and by the way, Martin Luther King, his purpose was a lot more important than selling retail goods and toasters, right? There was a deeper why to that. And again, I think a lot of companies will go back and like, our purpose, I mean, oh God, I can't want to give names. A lot of times, Mark Zuckerberg talks about the purpose of Facebook was for people to connect and get together. No, it wasn't. You're rating girls and trying to date girls. That's why you did it, okay? And you do it because it makes you a lot of money. You're not doing it because you really care about the world community coming together. That's an afterthought. Let's just be clear on that. And that's not good or bad. All right, I'll let you make that judgment, but let's be really clear about it. That's why the reason Mark Zuckerberg started or kind of worked with the twins. I never can remember their names because their names sound like a really fake name because it's kind of funny to me. He didn't start that out. He started out to meet girls and to make money. But here we go.
Outside in, it's obvious. We go from the clearest thing to the fuzziest thing. But the inspired leaders and the inspired organizations, regardless of their size, regardless of their industry, all think, act, and communicate from the inside out. Let me give you an example. I use Apple because they're easy to understand and everybody gets it. If Apple were like everyone else, a marketing message from them might sound like this. We make great computers. They're beautifully designed, simple to use, and user-friendly. Want to buy one? Meh. And that's how most of us communicate. That's how most marketing is done. That's how most sales is done. And that's how most of us communicate interpersonally. We say what we do. We say how we're different or how we're better. And we expect some sort of behavior, a purchase, a vote, something like that. Yeah. Here's our new law firm. We have the best lawyers with the biggest clients. We have, we always perform for our clients, do business with us. Here's our new car. It gets great gas mileage. It has, leather seats. Buy our car. But it's uninspiring. Here's how Apple actually communicates.
There's some really cool cars out there that inspire me.
Everything we do, we believe in challenging the status quo. We believe in thinking differently. The way we challenge the status quo is by making our products beautifully designed, simple to use, and user-friendly. We just happen to make great computers. Want to buy one? Totally different, right?
Now, again, I like that example. Does it inspire me? Did I get a little tingly inside? Oh, I did. I really did. Is that really how it works? Yeah. Remember when Steve Jobs left Apple and they weren't making money? They weren't talking about the why. They were talking about bringing Steve Jobs back to save the company so it can make a lot more money and meet its earnings call. Okay, that's what did it. Now, is there a part of that? Probably really dreamed upon by Steve Jobs, yes. Is that a part of the story? It is, for sure. Is that the only part of the story? No. And I think it's intellectually dishonest to present it as such. That's the only thing. Because in the end, when push comes to shove, I've been there. Companies care. The CEOs care about themselves and the shareholders, right? And the stakeholders, right? They don't care about the why unless it's a hugely purpose-driven organization, an anomaly to most organizations. We'll do another minute or
ready
two
to buy
on
a
this.
computer from me. All I did was reverse the order of the information. What it proves to us is that people don't buy what you do, people buy why you do it. People don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. This explains why every single person in this room is perfectly comfortable buying a computer from Apple. But we're also perfectly comfortable buying an MP3 player from Apple or a phone from Apple.
Again, I think that's a half truth. A lot of times there's companies I like what they stand for. I'll give them a first-hand look, a first try look. But if their product's not good or it's overpriced or the quality is low, I won't do it. Right? I got to buy something that has value to it, makes my life better, is meeting that market need we talked about, right? I'm not buying an MP3, it's funny, right, from Apple because I like the company. You know, I know there's a cult of Apple, but I'm not sure that cult is because they like the company. There's prestige that comes with the name. Plus, once you buy an Apple thing, you got your iTunes on it. You know, you don't want to go to the Android because then you got to rebuy all the songs you got. So I'm not sure. This is so oversimplifying things. Again, I believe the why is important, particularly in our lives. You know, our deeper why is the most important thing as human beings. But to kind of put it to a company and think that's how companies operate, I'm not sure that's true.
Or a DVR
but I love
from
Simon,
Apple.
so it sounds
But
great.
as I said before, Apple's just a computer company. There's nothing that distinguishes them structurally from any of their competitors. Their competitors are all equally qualified to make all of these products. In fact, they tried. A few years ago, Gateway came out with flat screen TVs. They're eminently qualified to make flat screen TVs. They've been making flat screen monitors.
Again, I think he's missing like brand and trust of the brand, and there's a lot going to that. More than it's because they have a big why. All right, we'll call it for there. I want to do more Simon in the future. We might just pick up from where we started here. I'll make note of that. We're at the 5-minute mark. Or I know there's another big one he did, which is, I think, the why. And maybe it's in part of this one. All right. So, okay, bonus time. Okay, as you guys remember, season 1 in Work Trauma, How Corporations Really Work, I kind of went at it with marketing people. I got a lot of comments about that. Oh my gosh. Marketing people are such marketing people. So I have one more I want to share with you. And I have to share it because it drives me nuts because I sometimes often have iHeartRadio on because I like to listen to different radio stations from across the country. So it's an ad actually for advertising on iHeartRadio. And what they do is they get the head of marketing from different companies, and they talk about why they talk about themselves, of course, because they're marketing people first, and then they talk about why they use iHeartRadio. There's a couple of them that really annoy me. This is the one I could find. This is one of the top ones, though. But this is such a marketing person. So it's just we'll have a picture. It's on iHeartRadio's Instagram. So let's do this real quick. This is just 2 minutes long. It'll take us to do it. But to me, if you haven't seen the marketing episode, making fun of marketing people, it'll all make sense. All right. So we're going to go to, like I said, this iHeartMedia marketers report. This is the head of Moderna being such a marketing person. This is marketing. This is why we don't think highly of most marketing people, I believe. She's doing a commercial of why her company uses iHeartMedia to advertise. Let's try this out. This is precious.
It's the Marketer's Report. Today, Kate Cronin, Chief Brand Officer of Moderna, tells us about the advantages the speed of audio production affords their growing tech company.
At Moderna, we have a mindset saying that we pivot fearlessly. And I think with audio, you can pivot fearlessly.
At Moderna, we have a mindset of we pivot fearlessly. We fearlessly pivot. We pivot so courageously. Think about this. Their mindset, their motto is to pivot fearlessly. Think about this. It was this woman and her marketing executives and team going, we have to be really agile, because agile is kind of the word that most people use, right? We have to be agile at a company to move quickly and change direction if necessary. And the world's speeding up. So what do we got to do? We got to pivot. Oh, pivot. That's a great word. Pivot, because we got to change quickly. Yes, but we're not just pivoting. We want to be fearless when we pivot. Yeah, we want to pivot. We got to fearless when we pivot fearlessly. That's who we pivot fearlessly. No, you don't. Let me tell you something. If you pivoted fearlessly in your company and your CEO or your VP of overhead didn't like it, they chop your legs off. But okay, here we go.
You can go where the news is and bringing in content that perhaps you didn't have a few weeks earlier. It's less 6 months in advance or 3 months in advance when you do a TVC. You're able to create really nimble content, which I think in this day and age, and particularly at Moderna, where we have new information coming out on a regular basis, being able to feed that information to the audio format makes being nimble and pivoting easy.
All right, that's enough of that. So it kills me. We pivot fearlessly. And that's a short version of it. The other commercial, she says pivot fearlessly like 7 times. So I can't handle it. Anyway, and that shows why you should go watch the I think it was mid-episode somewhere in season 1. Marketing. All right, everybody. That does it today for Work Trauma, How Corporations Really Work, the TED Talk Takedown edition. So if you have any different TED Talks or different interviews of businessmen, which we're going to move to next, you want me to kind of talk about or kind of react to, I'd be happy to do that. And remember, we do this podcast so you really know how corporations work, so you can make the best decisions of who you work for, how you navigate an organization. And like I said, if you're a leader, how to build better and stronger organizations by being a better leader. Thank you so much, and we'll catch you next time. Be sure to like and subscribe and tell people about this podcast. Thank you so much. Till next time.